People would like to ask the question, what is a typhoon?
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are quite confused. You know, there's talks of hurricanes and there's tropical cyclones. So those are just basically different names of what they call those storms. A typhoon, as they said on, is a superstorm, and this is, you know, it develops over Southeast Asia. It develops over, warm waters, and you can get it almost most parts of the world. We also get them here in South Africa, and they called something different. They called something different in Australia, and they called something different in the United States, and so on. But yeah, a typhoon is pretty much a superstorm with very strong winds. They develop over warm waters and different latitudes, as I mentioned on.
What causes it? Is it warm waters?
Yeah, unstable air conditions, low pressure cells, very warm waters. That's a very key factor to what causes a typhoon. And low
Are they much stronger, of course, than hurricanes and cyclones, I would imagine? Or are there differences?
There are differences. This one is just about one of the strongest. It's actually the strongest in modern times. But, typhoon and a hurricane is pretty much the same thing. They just called differently. In the United States, they call them the hurricanes. We call them tropical cyclones here in South Africa or Southern Africa. And in Australia, they call them willy-willies. So Southeast Asia, they get them the strongest because their conditions there are usually, the most pristine for such events.
Are some geographical regions more prone to get a typhoon and to experience a typhoon than others?
Yes, they are. If you look at Southeast Asia, the Philippines particularly, where they are, they're just close to the equator. They are at areas where the sea surface is very warm, humid conditions along those parts of the continent, and it's open sea, and they need a water surface. They need water to move and to develop as strong as possible. And the Philippines is just an open land where they get struck. Hurricanes as well. Katrina, you've heard about the ones that hit America. Those as well. They develop in the Atlantic, and it's just open sea.
Now, to what extent does global warming contribute to these extreme weather conditions that we've seen lately?
Yeah, global warming, we need to be careful with that one because it is, we tend to associate every weather pattern with global warming.
If it rains too much here, we say it's global warming, or it's too long, too hot too long, we say it's global warming.
Exactly, which is quite true to some extent. The ladies that were here earlier on, they were saying that with global warming, temperatures will change, and climate change actually at large is just severe weather patterns that we are not used to, with places that are dry becoming maybe drier, or maybe they're getting flooded, and places that usually get floods will become more flooded. And if you look at this typhoon, if it gets warmer, sea surfaces could also get warmer, meaning these storms could be intensified, these storms could get worse and worse. And, with strong winds at about 200 miles per hour, you can imagine no building can withstand that. And especially in vulnerable places such as the Philippines, there aren't well-developed structures over there. I can imagine disaster management plans are not as in place as other countries. And that's why the severity of these storms are, at that extent.
Now, I've spoken to some South Africans around the hurricane in the Philippines, and some of them were saying, we're very lucky in South Africa. Is that true?
Well, there's a saying that, one man's fortune is another man's misfortune and so on. We might be lucky in South Africa, but people in Zimbabwe or Mozambique may not be so lucky, and people in Madagascar may not be so lucky. If you look at how it happens with us in South Africa, is that we've got Madagascar almost shielding us away from those tropical cyclones. Because as soon as it moves over land, it loses its power. That's why now the typhoon is now downgraded to just a cyclone. Because it loses its power as soon as it moves over land, because there's a lot of friction taking place. So what happens is we would get a tropical cyclone, it would move over Madagascar or move over some parts of Mozambique, lose most of its power, and all we get in Limpopo and some parts of Zimbabwe, and maybe over Mpumalanga, we'd get lots of rainfall. So because we were sort of lucky, we were saved by Madagascar and Mozambique.
Now, as a meteorologist, how precise are you in your forecast of a typhoon, and can it be predicted?
Yeah, well, we can pretty much predict a lot of weather events and weather storms that take place. The extent to, or the speed at how they move is what makes it very difficult. We would predict it, or we would see it happening and developing, this 1 minute, and we'd estimate that in the next 2 or 3 hours, it could hit a certain place. But it could move much faster than what we think. And imagine evacuating 10,000 people in the space of 2 or 3 hours, something very difficult. And yes, we can monitor them, yes, we can watch them, but in terms of being 100% accurate, I mean, if I were to say, yes, we're 100% accurate, then why do we still get devastation and why do we still get these losses? But yes, we do monitor them and we can see them at a very, very high level. But it is sometimes very difficult to predict where exactly they're going to hit, on what time they're going to hit.
Tsietsi Monare, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.